What happens when an act of pure compassion collides with the dangerous world of organized crime? When protecting two innocent children leads you straight into the arms and heart of the most feared man in the city? This is a story about unexpected love, fierce protection, and discovering that sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters most. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss how this incredible story unfolds. The rain hammered against the windows of Sunshine Daycare with the kind of relentless intensity that made even the bravest souls want to stay indoors. Maya Rodriguez wiped her hands on her apron, glancing at the clock that read 7:30 p.m. Most of the children had been picked up hours ago, but two small figures remained huddled together on the reading mat, their dark eyes watching the door with the kind of hope that broke her heart a little more each day. "Miss Maya," whispered 4-year-old Sophia, her tiny hand tugging at Maya's sleeve. "When is Mama coming?" Maya knelt down, smoothing Sophia's dark curls with gentle fingers. At 28, Maya had been running this daycare in Chicago's Little Italy for 3 years, but she'd never encountered a situation quite like this. Sophia and her 3-year-old brother Marco had been staying later and later each week, sometimes until nearly 9 o'clock, while their mother, a woman Maya had met only twice, seemed to treat the daycare like a 24-hour service. The first time Maya had met Isabella, she'd been struck by the woman's beauty, tall, elegant, with the kind of polished appearance that spoke of money and privilege. But there had been something cold in her eyes when she looked at her children, something that made Maya's protective instincts flare. Isabella had barely glanced at Sophia and Marco as she'd filled out the enrollment forms, more interested in her phone than in answering questions about their dietary restrictions or nap schedules. "She'll be here soon." "Sweetheart," Maya said softly, though doubt gnawed at her stomach. "How about we read another story while we wait?" Marco, who rarely spoke, simply nodded and pressed closer to his sister. The boy had the most striking green eyes Maya had ever seen, unusual for his olive complexion, and there was something almost regal about the way he carried himself, even at such a young age. He reminded Maya of old paintings she'd seen in museums, portraits of young princes with serious expressions and knowing eyes. Maya had tried calling their mother, Isabella, multiple times throughout the day, but each call went straight to voicemail. The emergency contact list was frustratingly sparse. Just Isabella's number and a notation that read, "Father, unavailable." No grandparents, no aunts or uncles, no family friends. It was as if these two beautiful children existed in a vacuum. The daycare had been Maya's dream since college. She'd grown up in a large, loving Mexican-American family where children were treasured, where every milestone was celebrated, where no child ever went to bed feeling unloved or unwanted. When she'd saved enough money to open Sunshine Daycare, she'd wanted to create that same sense of family for other children. Most days she succeeded. But Sophia and Marco's situation was testing every boundary she'd set for herself. As Maya settled between the children with a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are, she couldn't help but notice details that had been accumulating over the weeks. Sophia's clothes, while expensive, were often wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. Marco had mentioned being hungry at breakfast time, suggesting he wasn't being fed properly at home. And both children clung to Maya with a desperation that spoke of emotional neglect. "Miss Maya," Sophia said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper, "do you think Mama forgot about us?" The question hit Maya like a physical blow. She pulled both children closer, feeling their small bodies relax against her warmth. "Oh, honey, I'm sure she's just running late." Sometimes grown-ups get caught up in things. But even as she said the words, Maya's protective instincts were screaming. She'd seen neglect before, subtle signs that most people missed. The way Marco flinched when voices were raised. How Sophia hoarded snacks as if she wasn't sure when her next meal would come. The desperate way they both sought affection from any adult who showed them kindness. Maya had started keeping a journal, documenting every concerning incident. Sophia arriving with the same clothes she'd worn the day before. Marco falling asleep during lunch because he'd been up all night listening to his parents argue. The time Sophia had asked if Maya had any extra love because she didn't think there was enough at home. Each entry broke Maya's heart a little more. The other daycare workers had noticed too. Jenny, Maya's assistant, had pulled her aside just last week to express concern. "Those kids are different when their mom picks them up," she'd said. "They get this look in their eyes like they're bracing for something bad to happen." At 8:45 p.m., Maya made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't leave these children here alone, and she couldn't keep them at the daycare overnight. Her small apartment wasn't much, but it was warm, safe, and filled with love. Something these children clearly needed. "How would you two like to have a sleepover at my house tonight?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light and cheerful. "We can make pancakes for breakfast and watch cartoons." The way their faces lit up told her everything she needed to know about their home situation. Sophia clapped her hands together, and Marco actually smiled, a rare occurrence that made Maya's heart soar. Maya quickly gathered their belongings, a small backpack each with a change of clothes and a few toys, and bundled them into her modest Honda Civic. As she drove through the rain-slicked streets toward her apartment in a quiet neighborhood just outside Little Italy, she tried calling Isabella one more time. Still no answer. The drive gave Maya time to think about what she was doing. Technically, she was kidnapping these children. If Isabella decided to press charges, Maya could lose everything: her daycare, her reputation, possibly even her freedom. But looking in the rearview mirror at Sophia and Marco, who were holding hands and whispering excitedly about their adventure, Maya knew she'd made the right choice. Her apartment was small but cozy, a one-bedroom space she'd decorated with warm colors and soft textures. She'd converted a corner of the living room into a reading nook with floor cushions and fairy lights. And it was here that she settled the children with hot chocolate and cookies. "This is like a fairy tale house," Sophia breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the twinkling lights and shelves lined with books. Marco, still mostly silent, had found Maya's collection of toy cars and was carefully arranging them in neat rows on the coffee table. There was something almost methodical about his movements, a precision that seemed unusual for a 3-year-old. Maya watched him work, noting how he organized the cars by color first, then by size, creating perfect patterns that spoke of an intelligence beyond his years. "Marco, that's beautiful," Maya said, sitting beside him. "You're very good at organizing things." The little boy looked up at her with those startling green eyes. "Daddy likes things organized, too," he said quietly. "Mama says it's because we're both weird." Maya felt anger flare in her chest. What kind of mother called her child weird for being intelligent and methodical? "You're not weird, sweetheart. You're special. And being organized is a wonderful skill." As Maya tucked them into her bed, she would take the couch. Sophia grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Miss Maya, will you stay with us?" "I don't like the dark." "Of course, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." Maya settled into the chair beside the bed, watching as exhaustion finally claimed the two little ones. In sleep, they looked even more vulnerable, and she felt a fierce protectiveness rise in her chest. Whatever was happening in their home life, she was going to make sure they were safe. She spent the night researching child welfare laws on her laptop, trying to understand her options. The children weren't technically abandoned. Their mother would likely show up eventually. But the pattern of neglect was clear. Maya had documented every late pickup, every missed meal, every sign of emotional distress. As dawn broke over Chicago, Maya made coffee and started planning breakfast. She'd just begun mixing pancake batter when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something about it made her heart race. "Miss Rodriguez?" The voice was deep, controlled, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." What she didn't know was that her simple act of compassion had already set wheels in motion that would reach far beyond her quiet apartment. In a world where loyalty was everything and family was sacred, someone very powerful was about to discover that his most precious treasures had been saved by a woman who asked for nothing in return. The next morning, As Maya was flipping pancakes and listening to the children's delighted laughter, she realized that this phone call would change everything. The voice on the other end belonged to a man who could give these children everything they needed, or destroy the fragile sense of security she'd tried to build for them. Maya's hand tightened around the phone as she stepped away from the kitchen, lowering her voice so the children wouldn't hear. "I'm sorry, who is this? My name is Alessandro Torrino. Sophia and Marco are my children." The name hit her like a thunderbolt. Even someone as removed from Chicago's underworld as Maya couldn't help but recognize it. Alessandro Torrino, the man the newspapers called the King of Little Italy, though they were always careful to add "alleged" before any criminal accusations. The FBI had been trying to build a case against him for years, but he remained untouchable, running his empire from behind the facade of legitimate businesses. Maya had heard the stories whispered in the neighborhood, how he'd taken over his family's operations at 25 after his father's death, how he'd modernized and legitimized much of the business while maintaining the old codes of honor and loyalty. Some said he was ruthless. Others claimed he was a protector of the community. All agreed that he was not a man to cross. Maya's legs felt weak. I tried calling their mother." She never answered. They were at the daycare until almost 9 o'clock, and I couldn't just leave them there alone. There was a long pause, and when Alessandro spoke again, his voice carried a different quality, something that might have been gratitude mixed with barely controlled anger. "You took them home with you?" "Yes, sir. They needed somewhere safe to sleep, and—" "Where is Isabella now?" The question was asked with such quiet intensity that Maya shivered. She could hear something dangerous lurking beneath the surface of his controlled tone, and she suddenly understood why people feared this man. "I don't know. I haven't heard from her since yesterday morning when she dropped them off. Mr. Torrino, I want you to know that your children are safe. They're eating breakfast right now and they're unharmed." The single word carried the weight of a threat against anyone who might have hurt his children. Completely unharmed. "They're beautiful children, Mr. Torrino. They just needed someone to care for them." Another pause. Then, "I'm coming to get them. What's your address?" Maya rattled off her address, her mind racing. She'd heard stories about Alessandro Torrino, how he commanded absolute loyalty, how his word was law in certain parts of the city, how he could be ruthlessly efficient when crossed. But she'd also heard whispers about his code of honor, how he protected those who couldn't protect themselves, how he never forgot a debt or a kindness. "Miss Rodriguez," his voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Are my children safe? Are they hurt? Are they afraid?" The genuine concern in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the cold, calculating crime boss she'd expected. This was a father, desperate for news of his children. "They're fine. They're eating breakfast right now. They're beautiful children, Mr. Torrino. But they seem confused about some things. They think you don't want to see them." The silence that followed was so complete that Maya wondered if the call had been disconnected. When Alessandro finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. 20 minutes, was all he said before the line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, trying to process what was happening. The most dangerous man in Chicago was coming to her apartment. She should be terrified, should be calling the police, should be doing anything except calmly, returning to the kitchen where Sophia and Marco were, decorating their pancakes with strawberries. But as she watched the children, really watched them, she began to see things she'd missed before. The way Marco held his fork, with a precision that spoke of formal dining lessons. How Sophia automatically said please and thank you, even when excited. These weren't just neglected children. They were well-bred children who had been emotionally abandoned. "Miss Maya, you look scared," Sophia observed with the unsettling perceptiveness of a child who'd learned to read adult emotions for survival. "I'm not scared, sweetheart. Your daddy is coming to pick you up." The reaction was immediate and telling. Marco dropped his fork. his green eyes going wide with what looked like fear mixed with desperate hope. Sophia's face crumpled, and she threw her arms around Maya's waist. "Please don't make us go back," she whispered. "Please, Miss Maya. We'll be good, we promise. We won't ask for stories or hugs or anything." Maya's heart shattered. She knelt down, gathering both children close, breathing in the scent of their shampoo and the lingering sweetness of syrup. Hey, it's okay. You're not in trouble. Your daddy loves you very much. But Mama says Daddy is always too busy for us, Sophia said, tears streaming down her cheeks. She says we're just problems he doesn't want to deal with. She says he only keeps us around because he has to. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and the picture they formed made Maya's blood boil. Isabella wasn't just neglectful. She was actively poisoning these children against their father. Whether out of spite, jealousy, or some twisted game of control, she was using them as pawns in a war they were too young to understand. Sometimes grown-ups say things when they're upset that they don't really mean, Maya said carefully, choosing her words with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. But I want you to remember something very important. You are not problems. You are gifts. You are precious and loved, and anyone who gets to spend time with you is lucky. Marco, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. "Do you really think so, Miss Maya? Even if we're too much trouble?" "Especially then, sweetheart. The people who love you most will never think you're too much trouble." Maya spent the next 15 minutes trying to prepare the children for their father's arrival, but she could see the anxiety building in their small faces. They'd been conditioned to expect disappointment, to brace for rejection. Whatever Alessandro Torrino was, whatever he'd done, his children had been taught to fear his indifference more than his anger. Exactly 20 minutes later, Maya heard the rumble of expensive engines outside her building. She peered through the window and felt her breath catch. 3 black SUVs had pulled up to the curb, and men in dark suits were positioning themselves strategically around the building. This wasn't just a father picking up his children. This was a military operation. The precision of their movements spoke of professional training. Maya counted at least 6 men, all wearing earpieces, all scanning the area with the practiced eyes of bodyguards who took their job seriously. Whatever threats Alessandro Torrino faced, he wasn't taking any chances with his children's safety. The knock on her door was firm, but not aggressive. Maya took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and opened it. Alessandro Torrino was not what she'd expected. Yes, he was tall and imposing, with the kind of presence that commanded attention. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit clearly custom-made, and there was an aura of controlled power around him that was almost tangible. But his eyes, those same striking green eyes that Marco had inherited, were filled with a vulnerability that caught her completely off guard. He was younger than she'd imagined, probably in his early 30s, with the kind of classical Italian features that belonged in Renaissance paintings. But it was the exhaustion in his face that surprised her most. The lines of stress around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant worry. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, his voice softer than it had been on the phone. "Thank you." Before Maya could respond, 2 small bodies launched themselves past her. But instead of running to their father, Sophia and Marco pressed themselves against Maya's legs, peering up at Alessandro with a mixture of longing and uncertainty. The pain that flashed across Alessandro's face was so raw, so genuine that Maya felt tears prick her eyes. This was a man who commanded an empire, who could have anything he wanted with a snap of his fingers. But he couldn't reach his own children. Sophia— "Marco," he said, crouching down to their level, his expensive suit forgotten as he knelt on Maya's worn carpet. "I've missed you so much. Mama said you were too busy to see us," Sophia whispered, but Maya could hear the hope in her voice. The desperate need to be proven wrong. Alessandro's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and Maya caught a glimpse of the dangerous man beneath the loving father. "Your mama was wrong, Principessa. I'm never too busy for you. Never." He looked up at Maya and she saw a silent plea in his eyes. Without thinking, she stepped forward. Sophia, Marco, why don't you show your daddy the cars you were playing with? He might want to see how you organize them. It was a small thing, but it worked. Marco's face lit up, and he tugged on Alessandro's hand, leading him toward the coffee table where the toy cars were still arranged in perfect rows. As Alessandro examined his son's work with genuine interest, praising the organization and asking questions about each car, Maya saw the walls beginning to come down. This is incredible. Marco, Alessandro said, his voice filled with pride. You have a gift for patterns. Did you know that's how I organize my work too? Marco's eyes went wide. Really? Mama says it's weird. It's not weird at all. It's intelligent. It's special. Alessandro's voice carried a note of steel when he mentioned Isabella, but his tone remained gentle for his son. Sophia, emboldened by her brother's success, began chattering about the pancakes and the fairy lights and how Miss Maya had read them 3 stories before bed. Alessandro listened to every word as if it were the most important thing he'd ever heard, asking questions, making comments, drawing his daughter out with the skill of someone who understood the fragile nature of a child's trust. Miss Rodriguez, he said, standing and turning to face her. Could I speak with you privately for a moment? Maya nodded, leading him to the small balcony off her living room. The morning air was crisp, and she could see his security team positioned discreetly around the building, their presence both reassuring and intimidating. I need to know everything, he said without preamble. How long has this been happening? How often are they left at the daycare? What have you observed? And please, don't spare my feelings. I need the truth. Maya told him everything. The late pickups, the signs of neglect, the way the children hoarded food and craved affection. She told him about Sophia's questions about whether her mother had forgotten them, about Marco's methodical behavior and his fear of being too much trouble. Alessandro listened without interruption, but she could see the storm building behind his eyes. Isabella told me they were happy, he said finally, his voice deadly quiet. She said they preferred staying with her, that seeing me upset them because of my work, my lifestyle. I believed her because I wanted them to be happy, even if it meant staying away. Mr. Torrino, Maya said gently, those children adore you. I can see it in their eyes. They're just scared because they've been told you don't want them. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city skyline. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with regret. I built an empire to give them everything they could ever want. But what they wanted was me, and I let someone convince me that my presence in their lives was harmful. When he turned back to her, there was something different in his expression, a resolution that was both beautiful and terrifying. Miss Rodriguez, I have a proposition for you. Maya felt her heart skip a beat at the intensity in Alessandro's gaze. A proposition? My children trust you. In one night, you've given them something I've been trying to provide for months. Security, comfort, love without conditions. He paused, running a hand through his dark hair, and Maya noticed the slight tremor in his fingers, the only sign of how much this conversation was costing him. I want to hire you as their nanny. Mr. Torrino, I run a daycare. I have other children who depend on me, and I can't just, I'll buy the daycare, he said simply. You can continue running it, but Sophia and Marco will be your primary responsibility. Name your price. Maya stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. In her world, people didn't just buy businesses on a whim. They saved for years, took out loans, made careful plans. But Alessandro Torrino spoke about purchasing her life's work as casually as someone might discuss buying coffee. You can't just buy a daycare because you want to hire one person. Miss Rodriguez, you clearly don't understand who you're dealing with. I can buy anything, anyone, anywhere. The question is whether you care enough about my children to accept. There was no arrogance in his voice, just simple fact. And underneath it, Maya heard something else. Desperation. This powerful man was desperate to connect with his own children, and he saw her as the bridge that could make it happen. "It's not about money," she said quietly. "It's about what's best for Sophia and Marco." "Then you'll do it?" Maya looked through the glass door at the children, who were now building an elaborate city with blocks they'd found in her toy basket. They looked happier than she'd ever seen them, and the way Alessandro watched them, with such fierce love and longing, told her everything she needed to know about his true character. But there were practical considerations, too. Maya had built Sunshine Daycare from nothing, pouring her heart, soul, and life savings into creating a safe haven for children. She had employees who depended on her, families who trusted her with their most precious possessions. She couldn't just walk away from all of that, no matter how much she'd grown to love Sophia and Marco. "I have conditions," she said. Alessandro raised an eyebrow. "You're negotiating with me?" "I'm advocating for your children. If I'm going to do this, we do it right." Maya took a deep breath, summoning courage she didn't know she possessed. "First, no more keeping them away from you because Isabella says so. You're their father, and they need you in their lives. Second, any decisions about their care, education, or well-being go through me first. And third, if I ever feel that this arrangement isn't in their best interest, I walk away. No questions asked." For a moment, Alessandro just stared at her. Maya could see him processing her demands, weighing them against his own needs and desires. She'd heard enough stories about his business dealings to know that people didn't usually make demands of Alessandro Torrino and live to tell about it. Then, slowly a smile spread across his face, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "You have steel in your spine." "Miss Rodriguez." "I respect that," he extended his hand. "Deal, but I have a condition of my own." Maya hesitated. "What kind of condition?" "You move into my home. Sophia and Marco need stability, consistency. They need to know that the person they're learning to trust isn't going to disappear at the end of each day. And frankly, I need to know they're safe. My world, it comes with certain risks." The implications of what he was saying hit Maya like a cold wave. She'd be living in the home of a man who had enemies, who lived under constant threat. But then she thought about Sophia's tears, about Marco's careful organization of toy cars, about 2 children who had been failed by every adult in their lives except her. "There's something else we need to discuss," she said. "Isabella." Alessandro's expression darkened, and Maya caught a glimpse of the man who had built an empire through force of will and strategic thinking. "Isabella is no longer a factor in my children's lives." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means that as of this morning, she's been relocated to a very comfortable apartment in Miami with a generous monthly allowance, on the condition that she stays away from Chicago and my children." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You can't just relocate people." "Miss Rodriguez, Isabella was using my children as leverage in a game she couldn't win. She was neglecting them, poisoning them against me, and putting them in danger through her carelessness." Alessandro's voice was calm, but Maya could hear the steel beneath it. "I gave her a choice: take the money and disappear or face the consequences of her actions. She chose wisely." The casual way he spoke about such a dramatic action should have terrified Maya, but instead, she found herself feeling relieved. Whatever Alessandro Torrino was, whatever he'd done, his love for his children was absolute. She agreed to this? Isabella has always been motivated by money and status. When I explained that she could have both, along with her freedom, in exchange for signing away her parental rights, she didn't hesitate. Alessandro's jaw tightened. She was more concerned about the size of her monthly allowance than about saying goodbye to Sophia and Marco. Maya felt sick. She didn't even want to see them one last time? She said it would be too emotional, and that clean breaks were better for everyone. Alessandro's voice was carefully neutral, but Maya could see the anger burning in his eyes. She signed the papers this morning and was on a plane by noon. What happens now? She asked. Now we go inside and tell Sophia and Marco that you're going to be spending a lot more time with them. And then we go home. Home? My estate. It's where my children belong, and if you're going to care for them properly, you'll need to be there too. Maya's mind reeled. Mr. Torrino, I can't just move into your house. I have a life, responsibilities, which will all be taken care of. Your apartment lease will be handled. Your belongings moved. Your daycare will continue operating under your supervision with additional staff as needed. He paused, studying her face. Unless you're having second thoughts? Maya looked through the glass again at Sophia and Marco, who were now arguing good-naturedly about whether their block city needed a hospital or a school first. These children had already carved out a space in her heart, and the thought of walking away from them now felt impossible. No second thoughts, she said. But we take this slow. The children have been through enough upheaval, agreed. When they returned inside, Alessandro knelt down beside his children. Sophia, Marco, how would you feel if Miss Maya came to live with us for a while? She could take care of you every day, and we could all spend time together. Sophia's eyes went wide. Really? Miss Maya would live with us? If that's what you want, Alessandro said gently. Marco, who had been quietly listening, suddenly threw his arms around his father's neck. I want you and Miss Maya both, he whispered. Maya watched Alessandro's face transform as he held his son, and she knew she was witnessing something profound, a family being reborn. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. Alessandro's efficiency was breathtaking. Within 2 hours, Maya's essential belongings were packed by a team of professional movers who appeared as if from nowhere. Arrangements had been made for the daycare to be managed by her assistant Jenny for the next few days, with a promise that Maya would return to oversee the transition. A lawyer had appeared with contracts that protected Maya's interests while ensuring the daycare's continued operation. I don't understand how you can arrange all this so quickly, Maya said as they prepared to leave. Alessandro smiled, and she caught a glimpse of the businessman beneath the concerned father. When you have the right resources and the right motivation, Miss Rodriguez, anything is possible. And my children's happiness is the strongest motivation I've ever had. As they drove through the gates of an estate that took Maya's breath away, she realized that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't even begin to comprehend. The Torrino family home was a sprawling Mediterranean-style villa set on 20 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. It was elegant without being ostentatious, clearly designed for family living rather than just display. Daddy, is that really ours? Sophia asked, pressing her face to the window. Everything here is ours, Principessa, including the horses in the stable, the pool in the back, and the library with more books than you could read in a lifetime. Maya felt overwhelmed. This was a world so far removed from her modest apartment and simple life that she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. But then Sophia grabbed her hand, and Marco pressed close to her other side, and she remembered why she was here. Miss Maya, Sophia whispered, it's like a castle. Are you really going to stay? I'm really going to stay, Maya promised, and meant it. 3 weeks into their new arrangement, Maya had settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Her days began early, helping Sophia and Marco get ready for their private tutoring sessions. Alessandro had decided that traditional school could wait until they were more emotionally stable. The tutors were carefully vetted professionals who came to the estate, ensuring the children's safety while providing them with an education that far exceeded what they would have received in any traditional classroom. Afternoons were spent in the gardens, by the pool, or in the massive playroom that Alessandro had stocked with every educational toy imaginable. Maya had been amazed to discover that the estate included a fully equipped art studio, a music room with a baby grand piano, and even a small greenhouse where the children could learn about plants and nature. But it was the evenings that had become Maya's favorite time. After dinner, the three of them would gather in the library, a two-story room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and comfortable reading chairs scattered throughout. Alessandro would read to the children, his deep voice bringing stories to life, while Maya watched the bond between father and children grow stronger each day. The transformation in Sophia and Marco had been remarkable. Sophia, who had been withdrawn and anxious, now chattered constantly, asking questions about everything from why the sky was blue to how airplanes stayed in the air. Marco, who had barely spoken when Maya first met him, now engaged in lengthy conversations about his favorite subjects, mathematics and science, with an intelligence that astounded the adults around him. But perhaps the most dramatic change had been in Alessandro himself. The intimidating figure Maya had first met had gradually revealed himself to be a devoted father, who was making up for lost time with an intensity that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. He rearranged his schedule around the children's needs, delegating more responsibilities to his trusted lieutenants so he could be present for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He learned to braid Sophia's hair, taught Marco to throw a baseball, and read bedtime stories with the dedication of a man who understood how precious these moments were. Tonight was different, though. Sophia had fallen asleep in Alessandro's lap during the third chapter of Charlotte's Web, and Marco was curled up against Maya's side, fighting to keep his eyes open. "I think it's time for bed," Maya whispered. Alessandro carefully lifted Sophia, and Maya took Marco's hand, leading him toward the stairs. As they tucked the children in, Maya marveled at how domestic the scene felt. How right it seemed for the four of them to be together like this. The children's rooms had been transformed since their arrival. Sophia's space now reflected her personality. Walls covered with her artwork, shelves filled with books and stuffed animals, a reading corner with soft cushions where she liked to spend quiet time. Marco's room had become a young scientist's laboratory, complete with age-appropriate microscopes, building sets, and charts of the solar system. "Miss Maya," Marco said sleepily as she pulled his covers up to his chin, "are you going to be our new mama?" The question caught Maya completely off guard. She glanced at Alessandro, who had gone very still in the doorway. "I'm your nanny, sweetheart," she said gently. "I'm here to take care of you and love you, but you love us like a mama would," Marco insisted with the logic of a 3-year-old. "And Daddy loves you." "I can tell." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Marco, that's not—" "It's okay," the little boy said, patting her hand with surprising maturity. "Sophia and I talked about it. We want you to be our mama. Our real mama." Sophia, who Maya had thought was asleep, opened her eyes. "We decided," she said solemnly. "You're the mama we always wanted. The kind who reads stories and makes pancakes and doesn't forget to pick us up." After the children were asleep, Maya found herself pacing in her room, Marco's words echoing in her head. She'd been so focused on caring for Sophia and Marco that she hadn't allowed herself to examine her growing feelings for their father. But the truth was undeniable. Somewhere between watching him teach Marco to throw a baseball and seeing him braid Sophia's hair with surprising skill, she'd fallen for Alessandro Torrino. It wasn't just his obvious devotion to his children, though that had certainly been the foundation. It was the way he listened when she talked about her day, the respect he showed for her opinions about the children's care, the gentle humor he displayed when he thought no one was watching. She'd seen him comfort Sophia after a nightmare, patiently help Marco with a difficult puzzle, and handle a business crisis with calm efficiency, all in the same evening. Maya had also begun to understand the complexity of Alessandro's world. She'd met some of his associates, men who treated her with a respect that bordered on reverence, clearly understanding that anyone important to Alessandro's children was important to him. She'd seen the security measures that protected the estate, the careful protocols that ensured their safety. But she'd also seen Alessandro's legitimate businesses, restaurants, construction companies, import-export operations that employed hundreds of people and contributed to the community. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Maya, could we talk?" She opened the door to find Alessandro leaning against the frame, his expression unreadable. He'd changed from his suit into jeans and a sweater, and the casual clothes made him seem more approachable, more human. About what Marco said, "Children say things," Maya said quickly. "They don't understand the complexity of adult relationships, don't they?" Alessandro stepped into her room, closing the door behind him. "Maya, these past 3 weeks have been the happiest of my life. Not just because I have my children back, but because of you. Because of the way you've made us into a family." Maya's heart was racing. "Alessandro, I work for you. This is a professional arrangement, is it?" He moved closer, and Maya could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "Because it doesn't feel professional when you laugh at my terrible jokes over breakfast. It doesn't feel professional when you fall asleep on the couch during movie night and I have to carry you to your room. And it definitely doesn't feel professional when I lie awake at night thinking about kissing you." "You can't say things like that," Maya whispered, but she didn't step away. "Why not? Because I'm your employer? Because of who I am, what I do?" Alessandro's voice was soft but intense. "Maya, you've seen me at my most vulnerable. You've seen me as a father, as a man who was lost and found his way home because of you. If you can accept that part of me, then you can accept all of me." "It's not about accepting you," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "It's about protecting myself, and protecting Sophia and Marco. What happens when this doesn't work out? What happens when you realize that I'm just an ordinary woman who got caught up in an extraordinary situation?" Alessandro cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize she'd shed. "Maya Rodriguez, there is nothing ordinary about you. You saved my children when their own mother had given up on them. You brought light back into this house. You made me remember what it feels like to be part of a family." "Alessandro, I love you," he said simply. "I love your strength, your compassion, your terrible singing voice in the shower that makes Sophia giggle. I love the way you make Marco feel brave, and how you've taught Sophia that she's worthy of unconditional love. I love that you challenge me, that you're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong, that you see the man I am beneath everything else." Maya felt her resolve crumbling. "This is crazy. 3 weeks ago, I didn't even know you existed. 3 weeks ago, I was a man who had everything and nothing. Now I have a family. Now I have you." Alessandro's forehead touched hers. "Marry me, Maya." "What?" Maya pulled back, staring at him in shock. "Marry me. Not because it's convenient. Not because the children need a mother figure. But because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because when I think about the future, every dream, every plan, every hope includes you. Alessandro, we barely know each other. I know that you take your coffee with 2 sugars and no cream. I know that you cry during animated movies but pretend you don't. I know that you check on the children 3 times every night to make sure they're breathing. I know that you gave up your entire life to save 2 children you'd known for a few months. And I know that you're the strongest, most beautiful woman I've ever met." Maya's head was spinning. "This is insane. People don't fall in love and get engaged after 3 weeks. People in our situation do," Alessandro said with a smile. "Maya, I've spent my entire adult life making calculated decisions, weighing risks and benefits, never acting on impulse. But with this, I don't need to calculate anything. I know. Before Maya could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. Miss Maya? Daddy? Sophia's voice was small and uncertain. Alessandro opened the door to find both children standing in the hallway, looking worried. They were wearing matching pajamas that Maya had bought them. Sophia's covered in stars, Marco's featuring rocket ships. We heard voices, Sophia said. Are you fighting? No, Principessa, Alessandro said, kneeling down to their level. We were just talking about something very important. What? Marco asked, climbing into Maya's lap as she sat on the edge of the bed. Alessandro looked at Maya, a question in his eyes. She took a deep breath, knowing that whatever she said next would change everything. Your daddy asked me to marry him, she said quietly. Sophia's eyes went wide. Really? And you said yes? Maya looked at Alessandro, at the hope in his eyes, at the children who had already claimed her heart. In that moment, she realized that love didn't always follow a logical timeline. Sometimes it struck like lightning, sudden and transformative. Sometimes the heart knew what the mind was still trying to figure out. I said yes. The children's delighted squeals filled the room as they launched themselves at both adults, creating a tangle of arms and legs and laughter. As Alessandro's arms came around all of them, Maya felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness, of belonging, that she'd never experienced before. So Miss Maya is going to be our real mama now? Marco asked. If that's what you want, Maya said, smoothing his dark hair. It's what we all want, Alessandro said, his voice thick with emotion. Later, after the children had been convinced to return to their beds with promises of wedding planning discussions in the morning, Maya and Alessandro sat on her balcony, looking out at the gardens bathed in moonlight. Are we completely crazy? Maya asked, her hand intertwined with his. Probably, Alessandro admitted. But I've learned that the best things in life require a leap of faith. Your world, Alessandro? It's dangerous. What if something happens? What if… Maya. He turned to face her, his expression serious. I won't lie to you about who I am or what I do, but I will promise you this. You and the children will always be protected. You will always be safe, and you will always be loved. Maya studied his face in the moonlight, seeing the man who had built an empire, who commanded respect and fear in equal measure, but who had been brought to his knees by the love of his children and a daycare worker who had simply done what was right. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I'll marry you. I'll be Sophia and Marco's mother. I'll be your wife. She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. But I have one condition, Alessandro raised an eyebrow. Another negotiation? The wedding has to be small. Just us, the children, and maybe a few close friends. I don't need a big production. Done, Alessandro said immediately. Though I should warn you, in my family, small is a relative term. Maya laughed, and the sound carried across the gardens like music. I think I can handle your family, Alessandro Torrino. I know you can, he said, pulling her closer. You've already handled the most important part. As they sat together under the stars, Maya thought about the chain of events that had brought her here. A simple act of kindness, a decision to protect two children who needed her, had led to a love she never could have imagined. She thought about Isabella, somewhere in Miami, and felt a moment of pity for the woman who had given up this extraordinary family. But mostly, she thought about the future, about Sophia's first day of school, about teaching Marco to ride a bike, about growing old with Alessandro and watching their children become the amazing adults she knew they would be. Maya, Alessandro said softly, Thank you. For what? For saving us, all of us. Maya kissed him then, soft and sweet under the Chicago sky, and knew that she was exactly where she belonged. She had set out to save 2 children and ended up saving an entire family, including herself. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of Sophia's laughter as she talked to her stuffed animals, probably telling them about the wedding. Marco would be fast asleep by now, his toy cars lined up perfectly on his nightstand. And Alessandro, her Alessandro, was holding her like she was the most precious thing in his world, because she was. They all were, and tomorrow they would wake up as a family, ready to face whatever came next together. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more incredible tales of unexpected love, family bonds, and the power of choosing compassion over fear. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the simplest act of kindness, and sometimes saving someone else is exactly how we save ourselves.